everyone, and welcome back to another Secret Sunday session. Today, I'm joined by Ryann Nicole, who is a nutritionist and therapist in the eating disorder space. And we are so grateful to have Ryann on here today, especially with all the work that we do at The Secret Burden in supporting people with eating disorders. So, thank you, Ryann, for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I was just telling Ashley, I just had a baby, for those of you that don't know. So this is my first official podcast coming back. So a little rusty, bear with me. And also, if you hear a baby in the background midway through that, that's Charlotte. She's just saying, hey.
I love that. I love that we're the first one back to welcome you in this new venture that you're on.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, so today we are going to be talking a lot about Ryann's story as well as the space that she's currently working in and some helpful tips to help people that may be experiencing binge eating disorder, bulimia, and some of the eating disorders that can find us sometimes struggling with how we see ourselves and how we have our relationships with food. Now, I will mention as well, there will be a trigger warning with this podcast. So if you find that you are triggered by any content, please reach out to your support networks and know that I know here in Australia as well, we have many resources that can really support you in your journey, whether that be us here at The Secret Burden, reaching out to Ryann, as well as we have resources like the Butterfly Foundation, Inside Out Institute, the Black Dog Institute, Beyond Blue, Kids Helpline, and Lifeline. So note there are people out there that will support you if you are all are triggered. But getting to today's episode, as I mentioned, I know a little bit about you, Ryann, and what you were doing in this space. But for those people that are not aware of who you are and what you do, who is Ryann and what is the work that she does?
So my name is Ryann, and I am a eating disorder therapist. And how I got started in this work actually just kind of happened organically. So going backwards, I personally struggled with an eating disorder, which is kind of what kicked off my journey, but not in the way that you would probably think. So for me, my eating disorder started as restriction. I think it was something that was subconsciously building, but there was this one moment where the straw really broke the camel's back, where I remember I saw a candid photo of me from a swim meet where I really did not like the way that I looked. And in that moment, I panicked and I freaked out and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to lose weight. Mind you, at this time, I want to say I was maybe 12 or 13. And I created this diet for myself to lose weight. And long story short, I lost weight and I lost a lot of it very quickly because I was so young and because I was swimming so intensely. I dropped a lot of weight really quick, where it started to affect my body, where I lost my period right away and my hair was falling out and cold all the time. And there was an instance where I was on a vacation with my family, and I remember my dad pulling me aside and saying, Ryann, we are so worried about you. If you do not start eating, we're going to take you to the hospital. And I freaked out and I was like, no, but I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't have a problem. I'm fine. I'm going to show them that I'm fine. And so it was lunchtime and we ordered food, and to prove to them that I was fine when I absolutely wasn't fine,
Mhm.
I ate as much food as I could. And that was the first official binge that I ever had. And it was like this high and it felt so good. But afterwards, I had the panic and the shame and the guilt and the, oh my gosh, I'm going to gain weight. And so I was like, it's okay. I'm just going to go back to restricting. But it was like after that one time, it was like the gates opened to binge eating. And no matter how hard I tried to go back to that girl who had so much quote unquote control, the harder I tried to control, the harder I swung in the other direction. And my binge eating was 2 to 3 days of being quote unquote good and restricting and being on a new diet to spiraling into eating everything that I could and driving around to place, eating as much as I could and hiding and eating in the middle of the night and just thinking to myself over and over, what is wrong with me? Why can't I get back to that girl who had so much control? If I could just control myself, then I'd lose weight. It was everything that I thought about. It was everything that I did. And that was my entire life for 7 years. And I remember that when I hit rock bottom, because when I was going through that, right, it's never like, oh my gosh, I had a binge, that sucked, I'm going to continue on with my life. It's like there's so much shame and guilt that comes along with it. It's like, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to do that again. And then you do it again. And you're like, what's wrong with me? And it's like, I'm never going to do that again. And it's just like over and over and over. And binge eating over here like really wasn't even talked about until 2013. So for me, all of this started in 2009. And so I remember Googling over and over, like, what is wrong with me? Like, I lose control of food. I eat until I'm sick. Like, I do it when nobody is looking, and nothing would come up. And so I felt crazy. And I was like, if anybody knew what I did, like, they would be absolutely disgusted. And so when I hit rock bottom, I feel like that was when it was just kind of starting to be talked about, but it really wasn't, because for me, it was 2015. It was my sophomore year of college, and all of my friends had gone out to have fun, to go to a party, and I stayed home because I had already made up my mind that I was going to binge. And anybody who struggles with that knows that when you've made up your mind, it doesn't matter what anybody said, like no one's going to stop you. And so after I went through with, I mean, there's no other word to describe it than just like the ritual of it, right? I remember
Mm.
sitting down, wrappers all around me, and being like, I can't believe that this is my life. Like, I cannot keep doing this. And it was like at that moment where I was more afraid to stay the same than I was to do something different. And that was the flip that needed to happen, because before, over and over, I'd be like, I want to stop. Like, I do anything to stop binge eating, right? So many people say that to me all the time, like, Ryan, I do anything. Like, I don't understand why I can't stop. And I remember I'd say, I do anything. And I went to, I mean, not to like ping pong around, but I had been to therapy multiple times. I had gone to go get help multiple times. And every time I went, and the therapist started telling me all the normal things to start doing, I was like, I'm not going to do that. Put away the scale? Heck no. Delete my fitness pal? No way. Take off my Apple Watch? Absolutely not. As I would continue to say, I do anything to stop binging, right? So it was at this point that I was really like, no, but I'll do anything. And so I actually went to outpatient treatment that summer, and best thing that I ever did. It was a combination of individual therapy and group therapy. So I did group therapy twice a week and then individual therapy one time a week for 12 weeks. And then after that, I did continuing care, went back to school. And then when I was in that program, that's when I was like, I have the most amazing therapist, changed my life. And I was like, I want to be that for somebody. Like, I want to be that person. And so that's when I was like, I want to be a therapist and I want to be an eating disorder therapist. And so I did all of the schooling and education, and I was doing my master's at a substance abuse treatment center, actually. And I was like, I don't know if this is the work for me. Like, I don't know if this is my path anymore. I'm just going to kind of get my master's, see where this goes, take a break, do some fun work, and then maybe I'll figure out what my path is. Then COVID happened. And I remember all of these social media, like wellness virtual retreats. And so many of the people doing them have zero credentials. And so I was like, why am I not doing this? Like, these people are doing these amazing things, and I have the credentials and I have the education. Like, why am I not doing this? And it was, obviously fear of what other people think. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to do this. And so my Instagram started as, I just want to be able to share therapeutic skills in a way that isn't so dry or isn't so hard to understand. And it kind of just blew up in a way that I had never planned. And so now I have a virtual private practice and it's kind of on pause right now as I'm just coming back from maternity leave, but I have a combination of online courses and my biggie is group work. I'm a big advocate for group work. I think this is one of those things that healing in a community goes so far because it takes away the shame of feeling like you're alone. There's nothing like being in your first group and hearing somebody else say, I've done that too. That just like, I don't know, it just heals you on a different way than, just the individual therapy does. So that was a really long ramble, but now I'm here and I get to share everything that I learned, not only from my education, but also personal experience, because there is a lot of shame in this. And I want anybody listening to know that whatever you've done with food, I guarantee you I've done it, but also there is hope. There is hope to change. There is hope to be free. There is hope to not be the person who believes that they will always struggle with food, because I'm proof of that.
Mm. Well, and that's a wrap. No, that was beautiful. That is just what an amazing story. And to be where you are today after everything that you've been through, like, congratulations. Like, what an amazing effort from yourself to be able to not only recover from your own eating disorder, but to come out of that and wanting to be able to help others. My hat goes off to you because I even know being in that therapy space, that can be really challenging as well.
It is. It is. Sometimes I think, you know, it's tough to like always be talking about food body when that was my life for so long. But I do know that it just hits different when you, or at least for me, like when I had a therapist that also had been in recovery, like it just, I don't know, it made me feel a lot more comfortable. And so it was kind of just this opening where it's like, I don't know, I really feel like everything that happened with my eating disorder is something that happened for me rather than to me. And I think that this was it. And I don't know if this is going to be forever. And I don't know if this is going to be long term, to be completely transparent. I feel like I'm having this like identity crisis as I just had a baby and now I'm a mom. And like that's like a whole new era of my life now. But I think that that's the beautiful part of life, right? Like it's always changing and nothing is ever constant.
No, nothing's ever permanent. I think that's the thing that
Yeah.
when you come to accept that, you're like, oh, well, let's just ride the wave.
Right, right.
Now, I want to dive a little bit into your story because obviously it did take up such a big part of your life. And you did mention that you started off with restriction and then it went into binge. Um, with that, did you find the difference in feeling between, say, like an restrictive eating disorder to a binge eating disorder? Because you did mention that when you started to binge, you got that feeling of, oh my gosh, like overwhelmed, like feeling good, and then the guilt tripped in. I think for people that don't understand eating disorders, can you explain a little bit the difference in feeling? Was restrictive, did it give you a different sense of feeling compared to binge eating disorder?
In a way, yes, because with restriction, there's like this superiority of like, I have so much control and nobody can make me eat. And I have this power. Like it's all mental. It wouldn't be a mental disorder if it wasn't in the mind, right? And I think that that's the biggest misconception around eating disorders is people think that it's about the food. And if it was about the food, then it wouldn't be go to therapy. It wouldn't be let's talk through this. It wouldn't be let's work on your thoughts, right? And so in the beginning with the restrictive piece, and I know a lot of my clients feel the same, it's like a high in the sense of I have so much power by choosing not to eat. Whereas The binges were more of a high of like, this is making me numb and this is turning off, but there's a lot more shame and guilt around it. And I also think that there's a big misconception around binge eating that it's just loving food or if it's just loving eating a lot. And I always say, I never tasted the food. It wasn't about tasting the food. It was never like, oh, I'm going to go get this like really enjoyable meal. I mean, it was like shoving raw English muffins in my mouth or like cold pasta in the middle of the night or like, just like raw, like just like plain dry cereal, like whatever you could get your hands on. And it was never like tasting like, this is so good. And I mean, not to digress, but I think that something I also hear a lot from individuals that I also struggled with as well is believing when I struggled with binge eating that nothing would ever bring me the same pleasure that food would bring me. And so there was a lot of fear in healing because I was like, if this gets taken away, like that's my main source of pleasure. Like, what am I going to do? And it took me a long time to realize when I binge, it was never sitting with the food. It was never tasting the food. It was never enjoying the food. It was a very mindless turn off experience. And that's not pleasure. That is numbing. And so, no reason, like, no wonder why things like going for a walk or having coffee with a girlfriend or reading a fun book or taking a breath never gave me the same sensation that food gave me because those things weren't numbing. And so, I think to kind of like circle back to your question, it's such a mental thing and it goes so much into control, whether it's control over I'm choosing not to eat in the restrictive piece or the control of I am still trying to control my food in fear of this binge. It's still a control piece.
Mm. And I think it's interesting you mentioned that control because I know a lot of people in this space that I have been able to mentor, and even in my own journey, that once you've gone through, say, restriction, and then you sort of go into binge eating disorder, there's another guilt attached to that because then you go, well, I no longer can restrict. And with that, I had so much control, I had so much discipline, and you almost become that was such a determined person. Now I've let go. Now I'm loose. Now I have no control. When once again, underneath all of that, there is still that need to feel in control or relief of what you feel like you cannot control in your surroundings.
100%. And then you're white knuckling it all day long because you're just trying to get yourself through the day. And the more that you try to avoid the food, the more you think about the food, the more you want the food. And the spiral continues, continues, continues. And when you're in it, it's so hard to see that you're literally doing the same thing over and over and over, right? Like when I would tell myself, I'm never going to do that again. And I would repeat the same follow-up behaviors post-binge by pushing off the next time I ate as long as possible, by working out an obscene amount, by, taking diet pills or whatever the case may be over and over and over. So it's like, how could I not repeat the same behaviors when I'm doing the same methods to try and counter? I mean, it's the insanity, right?
Absolutely. And when we look at it as a coping mechanism, it's no different, say, to someone that abuses alcohol or abuses drugs in order to numb the pain. It's just that I personally feel that in this space, it is so stereotyped and there is so much shame attached to it. No one talks about it. It's not
Well, and the
normalized.
tough
There's no
thing
that group.
too is, yeah, and the tough thing too, you gotta eat. You gotta eat. So, like alcohol or drug, you can't just take it away. You just can't take it away. And I think there is this sense of relief or I think hopefulness when someone finds something like I don't know if you have this over there but like Overeaters Anonymous or Food Addicts Anonymous where they take the approach of abstinence and it's like okay, that's my answer, I'm addicted to food and this is going to solve all of my problems. And then you start trying to do that and you realize, wait a minute, the same thing is happening, the same thing is happening. And then there's even more shame. Like, I can't even do this. What is wrong with me? Instead of taking a step back and being like, you know what? Maybe that's not the best approach for me. Maybe I just need to learn how to be okay around these foods. Think about these foods differently. Maybe heal what is causing me to go to the foods like this instead of just stripping them away. Because in that element, it's not the same as alcohol and drugs because, again, you have to eat.
And that's in you have to turn up every day and you have to continue
Yeah.
to face it. And I
Yeah.
love this concept in almost sharing that to people that don't understand eating disorders in the terms that no matter what, you have to continue to turn up and you have to continue to face your fears day in and day out. That is something that you can't take away. And that's honestly why I think people that go through eating disorders are one of the strongest people that you will ever meet because they have to turn up for themselves and they have to do treatment every single day with almost no reward or no one understanding. And they have to go through life with that always with them. And I feel that that is a strength that if you are going through something and you are just turning up every day and just trying and facing those fears, that is something that you should be so appreciative and so grateful and proud of yourself for because that is a win.
Oh, 100%. And it's also really scary because you don't know what's going to happen on the other side. And something that I tell my clients that I wish somebody told me maybe would have saved me a few years, maybe not hindsight 2020, right? But I have never met one person that has fully gone through healing their relationship with food or gone through recovery that has said, no, this is a worse way to live. I have never met one person like that. And I think when you're starting this and it's so scary, it's helpful to hear that because you're like, what's going to happen to my body? What's going to happen to my life? What's going to happen to my emotions when I let go of all of this? And it can be so reassuring to hear that there are people that have been through recovery and all of those people, if you have someone that doesn't feel this way, send them my way because I would love to talk to them. But I have never met someone that has truly gone through it and has said, nope, this is a worse way to live because it's not. It's not. But we can't see that until we're there.
Mm, absolutely. And I always tell people as well when you're in that mindset, what do you have to lose? You're at the
Yes.
stage where honestly you're already suffering. If you're scared of, oh, it's going to be worse, isn't it already worse? Isn't it already bad? Don't you already go through that cycle and hate it day in and day out? So you just try or just give it a go or experiment. I feel like my whole recovery was like got nothing to lose. I'm just going to give it a go. Everybody keeps telling me life is better on the other side. I'll give it like 6 months. I'll just see how it is. And then once I got to say that 6 months, it ended up being, 6, 7 years later. But I just kept getting that sensation of it is better. Let's just go a little bit further. And I feel if
Yeah.
you're curious and if you're open to it, you will really start to embrace and love who you find along the way of recovery.
And you can totally take that approach, like Ashley just said, where you're like, you know what, I'm just going to try. And if you hate it, you can go back. Like, that's what I say to a lot of my clients too that are really scared. I'm like, okay, you've invested a lot of money and you've taken the time to dedicate yourself to this program. Like, give yourself the 3 months or the 6 months or whatever, really give it. And if you hate it, you can go back, but you owe it to yourself to give it a shot because then you'll never know. I know it is really hard though, because going back to the whole mental component, it's that thought of, but maybe this next time will be different, right? Maybe this next time is the one time that I'll finally be able to. But it's like, how many times are you going to keep saying that to yourself before you blink and you're 80 and your entire life has gone by because you're like, maybe it's this next time? I think that sometimes it takes truly hitting that rock bottom moment to be like, I can't do this anymore.
Mm.
To really get rid of that thought because that is the thought. That is the ultimate thought that keeps sucking that sucked me in and anyone listening, like I'm sure that's the thought that keeps sucking you in because it's like, why would you keep going back? And that's because diet culture does such a good job at selling that to you. If you just tried it, this is going to be it, right? And so that's why I love having these conversations. So maybe we can just open up your perspective to just wondering because I know I'm not here to tell you what to do, but if I can get you to see, okay, maybe I'll try. then I've done my job.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that. It's, as I said, that little bit of curiosity. But I think with that as well, we talk about binge eating disorder or bulimia or whatever eating disorder someone is experiencing as almost the symptoms and what occurs and the behaviors that happen. But there is that root cause that can cause a lot of people to go to these behaviors in order to cope. In your experience, we know there are so many factors that can contribute to someone, but what are you finding are common things that lead people to want to turn to eating disorder behaviors?
Ooh, I usually feel like it's three main things. First, it starts as I just want to be healthy and it
Mm.
goes too far. It starts as something in my life feels out of control, and this is something that I can control, or there is a trauma that you've experienced that is so emotionally painful that you don't know how to handle that this distracts you from. There's obviously so many elements, but I feel like typically those are the main three that I see.
Mm. And with them, it's quite interesting because I think so often people think you have to have gone through something in order to have an eating disorder. Like there has to be a trauma there somewhere. But sometimes it's just that need and that want to be validated or to be loved or to feel enough to not just yourself, but to someone. And the eating disorder is almost that comfort mechanism to be like, I've got you, I hear you, I can give you that feeling that you need. Just lean in and tap into me, and I'll give you all the feelings that you feel like you're missing.
Oh, for sure. That's why I definitely like to throw in there that it just started as I want to be healthy and then went too far because you start doing these innocent things and then you get positive reinforcement from others, or you experience the highs of the power that you feel from restricting, or the high from the binge, or just the I really think it's the comments that really just like from someone that doesn't have anything super traumatic, that it started as just like a simple, I want to get healthy, body change, started getting all of this positive reinforcement. I mean, we're human beings, right? Like positive reinforcement feels good, validation feels good. Like we can't deny that. And then there's this fear that comes in where it's like, okay, this is getting me the attention and the validation and the praise, and I really like this. I don't want it to stop.
Mm. And then, I mean, you add that with the culture that we are living in
Yeah.
today, where being healthy, being fit, looking after yourself, whatever that looks like, is so glamorized to the point where it is sickening to watch diet culture play out because it is reinforcing a message that you're not good enough. You need to be healthy. And if you're not losing weight, you're not healthy. And for some people, if they look at themselves and feel that that's not working for them, then they are going to look to more extreme measures to try and fit that mold and try and fit into society.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes me so sad to think that the world that we live in turns it to us like it's our fault. It's all, like we're the problem or we're doing something wrong. And to just like give you a perfect, just innocent example. So I go to this mom's group every single Friday. Coolest thing, you sign up based on your due date. So everyone in my group's baby is like 2 weeks apart, and there's 12 moms in my class. So we all go together and all the babies like sit around and we just chat about our highs and lows of being a mom. But every baby in there is within 2 weeks of age. And so one of the girls that I sat next to on the first day, we've gotten pretty close. Our babies are 1 day apart. And my daughter is twice the size of her daughter, and they are 1 day apart. And we would never look at them and be like, my daughter doesn't have willpower or control or something's wrong with her. We're like, her body is just bigger than the other person's body. So why do we do that when people grow up, right? And I think that that's one of those things where we take a step back and it's like, huh, yeah, like I wouldn't say that in that situation. So why am I saying that to me in this situation?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hindsight and that perspective is so great, but so often we're not
Right.
using it, unfortunately. But I mean, so eating disorders, we look at them and they're very, as we mentioned, very stereotypical and something that people don't understand and can have so many factors that can contribute to why one may let in one into their life. Looking back on your journey, do you remember, if you don't mind me asking, uh, why you started looking to an eating disorder in order to cope?
Ooh, I've never been asked that before.
Got to go a little deep now.
It is. I I don't know. Like I would say it was just the thing available. It was just the thing available. And I think, you know, there are people that choose alcohol, there are people that choose drugs, there are people that choose work, there are people that choose sex. And for me, I guess food was just, it was there. Like it was, I was in a vulnerable place, and that was just, I mean, because I was 12, just the thing that I had seen, or the first thing that I was like, I can control. And I would say that that was just the one that fell into my lap.
Mm. And it's interesting you mention that, because a lot of people, I think food is not the easier option, but as you said, almost the most available. Like, what else are you going to do at that age that is going to be a means of control, especially when there's so much limited information about how bad your relationship with food can get, where, there's a lot of information about how, poor abuse of alcohol or drugs, or as you mentioned, sex, like there's conversations around that that can make you aware of I'm not going down that path. But with food, because it's like you just eat it every day and it's something that you can
Right.
almost hide, it's like, well, why can't I just choose that as something that's going to help me
Right.
control?
And because, I mean, obviously people talk about it in a diet culture way, like I'm so bad for eating that, or I'm not going to eat that, or I'm on a diet, or whatever the case may be. People very rarely talk about when they're struggling or the thoughts that they're having about food. And that's also why I think community is so important when you're healing from this, because you feel like you're the only person that thinks this way. And you feel like you're the only person doing this with food. And you feel like you're the only person in the world that struggles with this. And you're not.
Mm.
And when you realize that you're not, it makes it less of a what is wrong with me and more of a what is going on? Like, what is the deeper root that is causing me to turn to this? And not because I'm broken, or not because there's, yeah, something wrong with me, but because this is what I learned works in a time in my life that I didn't have any other skills.
Mm. Was there a point in your recovery when you really realized that you weren't alone?
I don't think until I went to treatment and I went to group that I did. Like I was like, "Oh my God," because because when I was going through this, it was kind of like I don't know if you remember this, but like the Tumblr, like Thinspo, like Anna Page, like all of that, where
Mm.
people talked about that, but nobody
Mm.
talked about this other side. And so I was like, I know people struggle with that, and I would say I wish that was me. I wish I had that. I wish I had that much control. They're so lucky.
Mm.
What is wrong with me? And so I didn't think that anybody else did the binge eating behaviors that I had. I only thought that eating disorders looked like that. So I never considered myself even having an eating disorder. And it wasn't until I was looking for help, and more so kind of just like, I don't know what to do. I just know that I need help because I can't keep living like this, that I found a treatment program that did specialize in emotional eating and binge eating. And that was the first time that I ever really heard about it. And then I went to group, and there were other people there. And that was the first time that I ever heard people say, I do this too.
Mm, wow. And as we mentioned, how powerful to sit there and to hear that as well.
Yeah.
And then, so your recovery, obviously, would you say started from that moment that you went and saw therapy?
Yeah, I definitely. So I think that there's this like idea that I hit that rock bottom, right? Which I talk about, and then I went to treatment and was like, bam, everything was so easy. I had been to therapy twice before going to therapy that third time. I had done programs before, wasn't ready, wasn't willing to do the work. So I would say that it wasn't until that final time in treatment that I started recovery, even though I had gone before, because I didn't do anything and I wasn't open, I wasn't ready. So at that point, I would say I just kind of went to therapy, was going through the motions, but I didn't officially start recovery until 2015.
Wow. And how long do you think it took till you got to a stage where you no longer turned to binge eating to cope?
For me, because I was so ready, it happened pretty quickly in the sense that, like, I think, I had some urges in the beginning of treatment, but I mean, I fall, and this was a way I would say my type A personality just flipped in the sense that I was like, I'm going to do everything that this treatment center says perfectly, and I'm going to do it 100%. Whatever they say, I'm going to follow. So I would say that because I was so willing to do everything that they said, that everything kind of just chilled out pretty soon. But I definitely still had the thoughts about food and the body thoughts, and those lingered. I want us for a while. They lingered for a while where I was still kind of thinking, I don't like this about my body, or still thinking, I shouldn't have that, or I really should eat this instead. Um, and I think for those, it really just took life. It really just took life and experience for me to work through those thoughts outside of actually engaging in behaviors.
Mm. And I think that comes to then that question that everybody always wants to know. How did you do it? What tools did you use? What strategies? Would you have done anything differently? And I guess you suggest anything else to those that you may not have experienced now, but now share with others that could be useful for their recovery if they're at that rock bottom moment and they're like, all right, I'm ready to give it all. What can they do?
Yeah, so I think that, and I know this was the case for me, when you think about recovery and you think about what do you have to do, we're looking for this like giant, like aha, rainbow and unicorns answer. And I wish that I could give you that, but I always tell people recovery is simple, but it's not easy. And it really comes down to doing the mundane, boring things over and over and over, like eating enough, like challenging your thoughts, like reaching out when you're struggling, like learning how to regulate your emotions, like connecting with other people. And we don't want to do that because it's hard. We don't want to do that because it's uncomfortable. And so when I say it's simple, I'm like, I could tell you what to do right now. Start eating enough, start, allowing all foods to fit, start challenging these thoughts, and you're good to go. But that's not easy to do. And it takes time to trust yourself, it takes time to trust your body. And I think anyone who's listening, the best advice that I can give you is stop looking for the magical big solution, because you're not going to find it. It's the simple, super boring things, the consistency, the challenging your thoughts, the eating enough. And the more that you do that, the more you will recover. I will also say that you do not need to go to treatment to be able to recover. If you are able to, and you have the means, does it help you quicker? Yes. But do you have to have that to recover? No. There are so many amazing books out there. There are so many amazing free resources out there. If you really want it, you will get it, you will find it. So do not let not having the means to pay for treatment be a barrier, because I have a lot of stories of people sharing on my podcast, The Food Freedom Lab, of going through recovery just from books and just from willing to do it themselves because they were like, I'm ready and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to do what it takes because I don't want to live this way anymore. And I think that's really important to throw out there as well, because I think that there are a lot of people that panic when they're like, but I don't have the money to pay for treatment. You don't have to have it. You just have to have the willingness to go find it. Especially now with social media and like your podcast and all of the resources out there, like it's there. It's there.
Mm.
You just
And
got to go get it.
it's almost like as well, if you don't have, as you said, the access to treatment or the finances behind you, that become your own research project. I remember that was my thing when I was just put on wait lists and I felt like I couldn't see people for 12 months and I was getting frustrated. I'm like, my window to ask for help is now. And at the moment, okay, I'm not getting answers there, but I still want this. As you said, the type A personality, I was determined. And I was like, I'm just going to do it myself. I'm just going to find ways. And sure, it wasn't easy, but that is recovery no matter what type of recovery that you take. It's the easy option is the one that you're doing. And that's why you're still in that place. And in order to get out of it, you have to go through the hard and you can't go around it. You can't go over it. You have to go through it. But there is such a beautiful ending or the beginning almost of your next chapter, which is without your eating disorder. And I only wish people would just give that a chance. And I do want to touch on something that I know comes up a lot for me with the people that I talk to, and it's the urge. There is this almost wave of emotion that comes up when people feel a binge coming on. And whether it's they quickly run home or it's in the middle of the night or it's the back of the kitchen, it's this intense feeling of emotion that rushes to them that I have to get rid of this now. And in order to
Mhm.
do that, food is my way. And as you said, it's not about the taste, it's not about anything else, rather than I just have to get rid of this intense urge. And if I don't, I can't sit with this feeling. It's almost like you've
Yeah.
got to run from that feeling. And in that moment, what is the best way for someone to, should they be avoiding it? Should they distract themselves from it? Should they ride the wave? What is the best way to overcome that urge without fulfilling that need to go and binge?
Yeah. So this is going to sound very counterintuitive, but I would say focus less on what do I do when I have the urge and more on why is the urge happening in the first place? Because you can go on as many walks as you want and you can call as many friends and you can take as many breaths, but that takes a lot of energy. And you know, when you have that urge, that maybe might happen like once every 10 that you have the energy to resist, to white knuckle it. But 9 out of 10 times you won't. And I don't want you to live your life just fighting through urges. Urges only come, as you said earlier, as a symptom of the deeper problem. So, something that I say over and over is that I am recovered from binge eating, but I'm not immune. And what I mean by that is if I broke my arm, for example, I can get it in a cast, I can give it time to rest, and it can heal. But just because it healed doesn't mean that I can't break it again. And the same thing happens with binge eating. And I like to use that arm analogy because it's like, I want you to think of the urges as the pain that's probably shooting up your arm when you have it broken. When your arm heals, you're not going to feel that pain anymore. Likewise, when you heal your relationship with food, those urges go away. And I know that seems like really wild if you felt those urges for a long time, but they do go away. The urges are only there because of the root there that is causing them to happen. Like it's no different than when you hold your breath and you gasp for air, the only reason why you gasp for air is because you were holding your breath. Like you're not just gasping for air when you're breathing normally, right? And so the same thing happens with binge eating. And that's why I almost get frustrated when I see so many accounts out there just showing skills on how to almost just like resist the binge urge. I feel like it can be so helpful in line with doing the work to like get to the root cause. But if you're just trying to do those things to resist the urge and that is your method, that's never going to work long term. So again, to answer that question, I would say let's look at less of what do I do when the urge comes and more of why is the urge happening in the first place.
Mm, amazing. And I couldn't agree more. There's so much information out there just to run away from it, distract it, put it on a movie and look, that's all great and good, but it doesn't get rid of it and it will keep coming back. So I think that's
Oh my
very
gosh,
useful
yes. And
advice.
nothing also is more frustrating when you do get the energy to like go for a walk and you come back and you binge anyways. Right?
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. And so I want anybody to know who's ever done that. Like that doesn't mean you don't have enough willpower. That doesn't mean that you aren't disciplined enough. It means that that root is still there. Like you're still just having a tough time. And yeah, that's gonna happen because we gotta heal.
Absolutely. Now, I want to last on some little scenarios and give you potentially just give your best advice, your message to a couple of things that I'm going to mention to people that may be in certain experiences or situations. So, first off, what is your message or advice to someone that has no idea what binge eating disorder is, that may know of someone that is going through a binge eating disorder, but has very much a mindset of just eat it, just cope, just stop eating? What would be your message to them?
If it was as simple as just stop eating, they would have already stopped. As I said earlier, it's not they just love the food. It is their way of coping. It is their way of controlling. It is their way of dealing with something that they don't know how to deal with. And the more that you make it about the food, the more that you're going to make it more difficult for them and push them away. So I would say the best thing that you can do for them is work on your relationship with food and help them by maybe sitting down with them to eat and not talking about the food, but talking about their day to get their mind off the food, or going and doing things with them that help them have fun outside of food, or just letting them know that if they want to talk, that you are a safe space. But again, if it was as simple as just stop eating, they would, because I promise you, this is something that they think about every second of every minute of every day. And they are so shameful and they don't want to do this anymore. And if they knew how to stop, they would. And if it was that simple, they wouldn't be doing it.
What about someone that may have just caught someone in a binge, or may have, say, woken up, found wrappers everywhere, or have just identified that this person is now struggling with a binge eating disorder? How do they bring that up with that person that they should potentially go seek help?
I just want to start by saying that if you ever catch someone, I can only imagine how shameful that person must feel. So definitely go into it gently. I can't imagine that that individual isn't going to try and come to you with some kind of excuse or some kind of lie to cover up the behavior. So I would say rather than trying to pick at it or really dig when they might not be ready, just again opening up that space and may be saying something along the lines of, okay, like, okay, no worries. Like, I'm just here if you want to talk. Or, like, if anything is going on, like, know that I'm a safe space. Because the more that you bring attention to it, the more that they're going to pull away. And the more that you just allow yourself to be that safe space, the more likely you are or they are to come open up to you. You cannot make somebody ready to change, and you cannot push someone into treatment. And the more that you do, I would say the more just chaotic your relationship is probably going to be. And so it's probably going to be better for you and for the individual to just kind of pull back and just let them know you're there when they're ready.
Now, to the person that is going through a binge eating disorder, what would your message be to them right now?
I want you to know that you're not disgusting. I want you to know that this isn't that you don't have enough willpower or discipline, and this isn't that there's anything wrong with you. You found something that worked when you didn't have any other skills, and that's not your fault. That was a way that you kept yourself alive. Like I always say that for me, the beginning of my binge eating kept me alive in the sense that if I continued to go down that path of restriction that I was going down, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be here today. And so thank God for my binge eating because that kept me alive. And from there, it continued to be something that kept me safe from something that I wasn't ready to experience, whether it was emotions or situations or past experiences that I wasn't ready to open up about. But I just want you to know that there isn't anything wrong with you and you're not a bad person. And there is hope. And even on the days where you think that I'm never going to be the person that doesn't struggle with food, I promise you that there is a way out of this. You just have to say, I'm ready, and it'll happen.
Mm, amazing. And then lastly, this one's probably to you more than anyone, but what about someone that has just had a child that may have struggled with binge eating disorder and that idea of potentially projecting that onto their young one? What message do you tell yourself, or what message would you tell other people that are in the same situation that are so fearful that they're going to bring their little girl, their little boy up in an environment that could also inhibit these behaviors?
I think that we have this expectation or this idea that if I hide it, then I'm keeping them safe from it. And I think that the more that you can just be transparent and open about it, obviously to a level that is appropriate for whatever age your kid is at, is going to be so helpful. With that being said, actions speak louder than words. So if you're just saying something, but you're doing something else, for example, if you're saying like, all foods are okay and like all bodies are great, yet you're regularly weighing yourself, or you're not allowing yourself to eat all the things, or you're not eating what everybody else is eating at the dinner table. Like your kiddos see that and they will catch on to that and they will notice that. And so, really working on your relationship with food and sharing, just what you're learning and things that have helped you is going to be so helpful. And then as your kiddos grow up, if you are having a tough time, like share it. Like I can't even tell you how many clients that I've had that will share like my mom was having a tough time with food. Like I knew she was struggling with food. Like I just wish that she would have said something instead of acting like she was fine when I knew she wouldn't, because when she wasn't, because it just it just created, I guess, more shame or anyways, I would, yeah, just modeling it is the best thing that you can do, working on your own relationship and maybe even taking some pressure off, knowing that you could do everything right and they might still struggle. You can't keep them safe from everything.
Mhm.
So give yourself some grace with that and
Are you
make sure you're
scared of
taking
that
care
being a
of
new
you.
mom as well? Like this being your first time, are you scared that not going to be able to shelter Charlotte from everything?
Yes, especially with social media now. I mean, that's so scary. I can't even imagine what it's going to be like when she gets to that age. Like, my husband and I will talk about what are we going to do? Like, what is the phone situation going to be like? And how are we going to manage that? I have no idea. I can't imagine growing up as a girl in this world today. I always say, thank God my fitness pal wasn't a thing when I started because I'm sure that would have took me a whole other level. It is really scary. I think for me, the thing that helps calm me down is being like, if I can just equip her with enough skills, then hopefully that can help, rather than just trying to like shelter. And what I mean by that is like when you are struggling with things out of your control, how do you handle that? When you are struggling with tough emotions, how do you handle those tough emotions? Like those kinds of things, and talking about that I think will help, but she's her own person. And so I think I I've learned very, very quickly that being a new mom, there's a lot that I don't have control over, and that's really freaking hard. And you learn that really quick. But it's just one day at a time.
Oh, that's all of us every single day, just one foot in front of the other, and you just got to keep going, keep turning up. But thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast and sharing your amazing story, trusting in me as well to share your story with our platform and our community. So thank you so much and congratulations on your amazing journey and to now being a new mom, which is phenomenal and exciting and scary and ah.
So it's so surreal. Like I still am like, I can't believe I'm a mom. I feel too young to be a mom.
It's not until like you appreciate it and then there'll be like a moment and you're like, oh God.
Yeah, totally. But it's an amazing journey and it's this new part of my journey. And, I think it is beautiful to look at how things ebb and flow and grow and you grow with it. And it's never perfect, right? And I want anybody else who's listening to this to know that there's never like this point on the line where it's like, I'm done. There have been many times throughout being pregnant that I struggled with food and body. Thank God I have the skills to like notice it and bring it back really quick. But I had thoughts and I had tough days. And I think that that's really important for you guys to hear because I think that if you see all of these people that are in recovery and they just like social media is put on this highlight that everything is always fine, it can feel like, oh my gosh, like what is wrong with me because I'll do well and then I won't. And that's not the sign of recovery. The sign of recovery is how fast do you get back when you notice yourself having those thoughts? How fast do you reach out when you're having tough days? How fast do you bring it back when you're having a really hard time? So, yeah, that was just one other
Just a
thing I
little
wanted to throw
add-on.
out there. Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. And with everything that you have provided, where can people find you if they want to follow you and follow your journey and everything that you're currently doing?
It's Ryann Nicole everywhere, and my name Ryan has two N's in it. So it's ITSRYANNNICOLE on everything. So that's where I am and would love to connect with you and chat more with you. And yeah, thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. And thank you so much, everyone, as well out there for joining in for another podcast episode. I'm so grateful to have Ryan join us all the way from America. This is the privilege, I think, of online technology in the
Truly.
21st century. We can hate on it all we like, but we're also able to connect with wonderful people from across the world. So thank you, Ryan, and thank you, everyone else out there. We will catch you all very soon.